panel's been discussing one of the most talked about stories of the week, the decision by Apple and Facebook to cover up to $20,000 worth of costs for employees or their spouses and partners to freeze their eggs. It's all part of a push to increase the number of women in the high-tech industry, some say, by giving them the option of concentrating on their career, putting their biological clock on hold. But it's important to remember that there are no guarantees in the science of delayed fertility. Joining the panel now is MSNBC national reporter Irin Carmon. So I've been trying to make an argument this is the other side of the reproductive justice story, that if we're going to talk about termination and birth control and coverage for those things, the other piece of it is access to assisted reproductive technologies. And I'm wondering, in part, specifically, like, for women of color, in part because we know if you decide to enter into the egg market, it's true, is that there's an egg market out there. It's very hard to find biological material of people of color. They're much less likely to be in that market. So there's a lot of reason for women of color in particular to want to preserve their own genetic material.
Right. I think that inside both adoption and the fertility markets, there are a lot of ugly realities that reflect our overall racist structure. That's going to be true across the board. It's true when it comes to, the ability to adopt. It comes with the ability to, access these kinds of services. But anything that makes it a little bit less pressured, a little less stressed. I mean, I think for women of color in particular, but women in general, there is so much pressure to be perfect and to do everything right. I mean, the conversation that we've been having has been all about, if I can just get the timing right, everything will be okay.
Right.
And I think, I remember the first conversation that I had with my friends, women across cultures, about fertility. We were 18 and we were in college, sitting in the dorm. We're like, what if I can't get pregnant when I'm 40? I think, taking the pressure off a little bit to say you have to do everything right at the right time, I think would really go a long way. And as important as the conversation we've had this week, and as important as it is to have frank conversations about fertility, I think everybody needs to chill out just a little bit.
But it's not even just about fertility. I mean, the reality is having children in your 20s, I don't think it's true for everyone, but it does delay your career. It definitely delayed mine. It definitely has implications, and it's expensive, not just the actual having of the child, the paying for the hospitalization, God forbid if you don't have insurance, the amount of medical bills, but daycare. I mean, I became a freelancer because I had my third child, and it just didn't make economic sense to keep forking over that much money for daycare, so you have to make different decisions about how you work, whether or not you try to change your career.
That is the biggest cost.
Absolutely.
And that's what I write about, because I love that we're supporting women and that we're supporting potential people.
Yes.
I want more support for actual people, for the little people that we bring forth. I worked for myself and turned down going back to TV full time because I ended up a single parent and my child needed me. And I had to be with her. I made that choice. It was a tough choice. Thankfully, I could because I delayed having her until I was 36. But childcare is absolutely not a perk. That is essential because we talk so much about the fertility issue and about creating children, and especially when we talk about certain politics, about preserving life, and nobody wants to take care of the lives that come out. So where's the structure there for that?
What happens after you get pregnant?
But I think there's one critical piece that we're missing, and one of the things that I've been talking to a lot of my mentees about at 27, 28, is I say the same way that we invest and plan out our careers, we have to invest in developing relationships that will yield the families that we want. Because one of the things that I realize is that we talk about relationships materializing. Right. Children materializing. Nothing just materializes, it takes investment. So one of the things I'm saying to young women is that the same way that you're planning out your career, you need to invest in dating if you want a partner. You need to figure out all of those things as well sooner.
Although I'll also say, and this maybe goes to your chill out point, there are aspects of it that simply are not in our control. So, I had the first baby at 28. I mean, I got pregnant like in a week because, heck, I was 28. And I was at a point in my career pre-tenure, all of that kind of thing. But and as much as it worked out, that marriage dissolved, right? So I had what I thought was a partner, but then then I had a baby at 40, and I had to jack up poor Odetta and Ursula. Those are my ovaries. Yeah, they got old black lady names. Odetta and Ursula. Right, they had to do all kinds of work to produce these eggs in their 40s. They were tired as a result of all of it. But it's been easier in some ways because I have a partner who is in so many ways willing to sacrifice the work of his own career. Like, so in other words, that, like, part of it is partnership and love, but part of it is like, my husband is like, all right, well, if one of us has to take the baby to the meeting, I'll take the baby to the meeting because you're on live TV.
And that is so critical. And again, and that is true too. And that is in a sense luck of the draw too. It's where do you find the right person? And
I didn't go invest in that. He just.
I didn't invest in it either. I happened to find the right person. Exactly. And it was the right person who not only that, but who would tolerate me having to be the baddie freelancer who says, you know, I think I'm gonna quit my job because I can't afford this daycare, so I'm gonna stay home. And you have to have that flexibility. So the partnership is important. But if you don't have the partner, you also then need the community. There are people whose family
and you need the policy, and you need the policies that allow all of that to be possible.
Yeah, I think the irony of some of these tech companies that we've been talking about is that when I talk to my friends that work for these big tech companies, they actually say this is a great place for women to work. On the one hand, you have the paradox that they want them to stay on campus forever, and there's this pressure of always being in touch. But on the other hand, they have so much freaking money, and they have so many benefits, and they help you get your errands done while you're there. You know, so I think the trade-off is that a lot of these employers might actually need to, because they need to keep women there, and they need to keep people there, that they actually might be good places to help out with that balance.
But I would back up in the funnel of causality even further and say all of those choices that I made, from the having a baby at 28, were all related to my income and my health insurance, and that was all related to the fact that there were affirmative action policies that provided me with the capacity to go to college and not come out with an enormous amount of debt. If I had still been paying $200,000 worth of student loans, and I wasn't, and let's just be very clear, because there were aggressive efforts to take working class students of color and provide them with opportunities. And you know, like, all of those things are interacting, and we don't, you know, we can see the freezing egg policy as part of it, but in fact, all the way back to Head Start and to college access, like, all of that is part of that freedom of choice question.
And that's the stuff that people are trying to take away. And the irony is, we're saying we want a society where women have mobility, but as you said, it has to go all the way back to the cradle. It has to go all the way back to support for that woman's mom, and then support for daycare so that she can be educated, and for her to get Head Start, for her to be able to have access to college. College is incredibly expensive, which is why we don't have universal college matriculation in this country, or not even as high as some other countries. If you don't do the whole piece, and if you start cutting pieces out, I don't know how we have enough women qualified to work.
So, Ty, are the little eggs still frozen?
I just froze the eggs literally a year ago, so and I'm paying storage on them. So my parents say that my grandkids are collecting rent, which is fine. I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm renting the storage unit. But yes, I have 10 eggs on ice, so they retrieved 12. I did one cycle. I paid for this out of pocket. Now, I am an entrepreneur, so would I have been grateful for a benefit of someone helping me to foot the bill of the $13,500 to do this? Absolutely. But again, I made a decision that I wanted to do this, and it was a choice that I made. So when you think about Apple and Facebook, one of the things that I think is great is that, you know, if you aren't the 22-year-old going to work at Apple, but you're the 34-year-old who says that I have been here working at Apple, and this is a benefit that I want to take advantage of.
Well, I tell you what, if you ever thaw out the little ties, just let us know. We'll get them a very fashionable Nerdland onesie as part of it.
Love it.
So Ty Beauchamp and is leaving us right now, but the rest of the panel is going to stick around, because up next, not just people will determine the midterm elections, but potentially persons will determine the midterm elections.